What is up everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today this is going to be my predictions on match day 9 I think, or match day 8, I'm not too sure, I've lost count already, of the championship. And I'm really excited to predict this weekend's fixtures because obviously we've had Carabao Cup action going on as well. We've had some really shock results and some terrific performances from championship sides and some really dire performance, to be honest with you, with some championship sides as well. But enough of that, we're going to go through the predictions of this weekend's fixtures. Obviously, if you like what you see and you like to see more championship content, I'll try and upload as much as I can with all the uni experience or whatever. Please give the video a like, a share and a subscribe, which will tell me that you guys still want to see that, and all of that will be tremendously appreciated. So without any further ado, let's get into this weekend's fixtures. Before we move on, apologies if my throat's a little bit croaky. I don't know why, I've just got a tickly throat by the time I'm recording this video, so apologies on that. So starting off with Fulham versus Wigan, I think this will be a very interesting game and a very big test for Wigan, who had a terrific performance against Charlton, getting their first win since the opening day win against Cardiff. With Fulham, they'll be feeling very hard done by. They didn't get a victory against Sheffield Wednesday. They controlled most of that game, but ultimately they lost their dynamic and they allowed Sheffield Wednesday to get too much into the game. And then Yuhu managed to score with practically the last kick of the game, which really broke Fulham's hearts because they worked really hard to get to that position. With Wigan though, they'll have everything going to them. It seemed everything clicked when they played against Charlton. They had a terrific performance, and it could be with Charlton being a little bit weaker without Lyle Taylor, but it was a very encouraging performance. Last time these two sides played each other, it was a 5-goal thriller, with Fulham narrowly managing to beat Wigan by 3-2. I hope for another repeat of that spectacle. With Fulham, I have no doubt they're going to have no problems scoring in this game. I mean, they've got so many attacking options, even though recently they've been averaging less goals per game than they have done at the start of the season. So you could tell you there'll be a little bit of fatigue going from their attackers. With Wigan though, I can see that they're going to need to be trying to be defensively solid in this game. At times they've been able to do that, but it's just whether they can sustain it for a whole 90 minutes. I think Fulham will be fired up and win by 3-1. I suspect that Fulham are going to feel quite comfortable in this game. They'll have most of the ball, and Wigan will rely on set pieces to try and punch it through Fulham because they have looked quite shaky defensively, so I do think they'll score. But I think overall the quality in the midfield with Tom Cairney driving everything, and then you've got the attack of Cavallero, Knockhart, Mitrovic and Bobby Reid. They've got so many options, so I think Fulham will win by 3-1. What's really weird is that we have 2 Friday night fixtures, which is a little bit odd for the Championship. The second one being Stoke versus Nottingham Forest. All eyes are going to be on Stoke at the moment. They endured with one of the upsets of the Carabao Cup tournament so far, losing on penalties to Crawley Town of League 2. With a game that there were encouraging signs from Stoke. They had a very good 20 or so minutes, but they just seemed to take their foot off the gas, and then they just allowed Crawley to grow into the game and to get a really good equaliser. In the penalty shootout, Sam Vokes, the scorer of Stoke's only goal in the game, was the only one that missed the penalty in the end, so really harsh on him and Stoke, but that's what happens, and Crawley scored all 5 of their penalties. Federici, I thought, could have done a little bit better with the final one, but it's just one of those things. With Nottingham Forest, they also experienced a really big defeat, but against Arsenal. There weren't going to be many expectations of Nottingham Forest beating Arsenal, but the manner which they lost really concerned me a little bit. It would be a little bit harsh just to base Nottingham Forest off that, because at times they played really well. They really tried to put men forward into the middle of the field. I thought Joe Nolly had a pretty good game. I think Arsenal just simply nullified them overall, and everyone for Arsenal, despite their scare against Aston Villa, all stepped up. I thought Callum Chambers for Arsenal had a fantastic game in that. Nottingham Forest, I think, will be aiming to win. If they can beat Stoke at this Friday night, they'll momentarily be top of the table, which I think is absolutely remarkable for Nottingham Forest. And this was a side I wasn't really too sure what to expect. I know they've got quality of being a top 6 club minimum, but I just wasn't sure with Sabine Namucci, because he was a guy that, you know, was a bit meh with Rennes, and since then Rennes have done better things. And with Ivory Coast, he failed to get a very talented Ivory Coast side out of the group stage of the 2014 World Cup with likes of Drogba and Yaya Toure in the same squad. So I wasn't too sure about him, but he's proving me wrong at the moment. But someone who is proving me right at the moment is Nathan Jones. I was still not too sure about staying along with Stoke. I wasn't really convinced with his performance. I understand why they've given him a chance. They suspect the owners wanted to give him a full transfer window to try and improve the squad. So far, his diamond system and him changing a few tactics has just not worked for Stoke so far. At times, Stoke look really good, but they just don't manage to score. It's so frustrating to actually watch as a neutral how Stoke really struggle to get their points. Because at times they can play some fantastic football. I think with both of these sides going as a really negative mentality, and I think Stoke at Bet365 Stadium, they don't look all too bad. I suspect this will be a very narrow 1-0 away victory to Nottingham Forest. I have a feeling Stoke are going to really struggle to score in this game. I think Forest have looked really drilled defensively, and they are very dangerous going forward in playing with the counter-attack. And I think with Stoke so far, I've been uncertain defensively, and I think that will show. So I think Nottingham Forest will narrowly win by 1-0. So the early Saturday kickoff will be Queen's Park Rangers versus West Brom. One of the games of the weekend, I think, because Queen's Park Rangers and West Brom, I think, are in terrific form at the moment. They're both in the playoffs as it stands, so if any team loses, it could really detriment their chances of staying into the playoffs this weekend. However, if one of these teams wins, it could really increase their chances of either staying there or even pushing to automatics. With Queen's Park Rangers, I really like the brand of football, as I say. They play a very attractive style of football, a lot of play and possession play into their midfield and a lot of joy down the wings. With West Brom, they're playing a system that is very defensively sound, but they are very dangerous down the wings, with Matt Phillips being very dangerous, and they really like to use their midfielders to contribute as well, like of Dean Garner. One of the memories sticking out from this game was at the Hawthorns when West Brom demolished Queen's Park Rangers by 7-1. I still remember that game. And the fact that this side would have been around the same time last year, and they are so much higher up the table and can really compete with the likes of West Brom now, I'm just amazed how much this side has grown since Steve McLaren left. With West Brom, they had a bit of a scare against Huddersfield. They were at home as well. They were behind twice against Huddersfield, but they did very well to get a comeback. And what I like about this West Brom side so far, I think they've got the right mentality, which is why they've not lost a league game yet. I think this will be really close. I'm really struggling to predict this one because part of me thinks that Queen's Park Rangers look unstoppable at the moment, but part of me thinks that West Brom just cannot be beaten at the moment. So I think this game will be a 1-1 draw. I think this will be very closely contested. I don't actually think Queen's Park Rangers will win the game. I think if I had to pick an alternative result, it'll be a 2-1 away victory to West Brom. So I'm going to say a 1-1 draw, but if I had to say another result, it'd be a 2-1 away victory to West Brom. So the next game is Swansea versus Reading. Both of these sides facing Carabao Cup action as well. The big talking point was probably Swansea failing to beat Watford. A game that was closely contested actually between the two sides. There was very little settling them. Swansea weren't giving up when Watford went ahead twice, but they just ultimately did not have enough. It didn't trouble Gomez in goal enough. In terms of these sides, in fact, Reading have never beaten Swansea from their head-to-head record going back to 2013. They've actually not played each other all that much. Swansea have an 83% win rate against Reading, which I think is actually ridiculous. Last time they played each other, Swansea did the double over Reading, winning 2-0 at Liberty and 4-1 at the Medeski respectively. Reading as well are not in a great form in the Championship. After showing some promise in their new signings, they have dropped down a little bit, but the likes of John Swift, Ejaria, George Puskas, all these players are showing progress and very good promise in their games. They just need to form as a team and to create more chances going forward and not to be as loose in the back. Swansea have got to continue to show their chances because it is actually 2 games in a row now in the Championship where they failed to score a goal, which was very surprising because at the first part of the Championship season they really loved scoring goals. They cannot allow this goal drought to continue in this game, and I don't think it will. I think Swansea will be pretty comfortable and win by 2-0, which will mean it'll be 4 defeats in a row for Reading, meaning that they'll need to pick up points very soon. A very interesting game I think will be Blackburn versus Luton. These two sides have only played each other once, all the way back in 2007 in the FA Cup, where Blackburn got a very convincing 4-0 away victory against Luton. This is going to be Luton's first time playing against Blackburn at Ewood Park. To think that they're now at the same level now, just over 10 years on, is absolutely staggering. It just goes to show how much Luton have grown to match Blackburn's level. I think it'll be close because I think Blackburn so far have not been too convincing in performance-wise, but they are looking more defensively solid, which is more encouraging. And I think the likes of Danny Gray and Bradley Dack are starting to find their form a little bit. They're starting to be a little bit more confident as well. Adam Armstrong as well did a fantastic goal last week. I'd hope he'd score a few more goals like that, like he did against Reading. With Luton, they're in a pretty poor run of form. They lost their home game against Hull City pretty convincingly as well. It was a pretty poor performance for them. They also lost at home against Leicester as well, which I think was by 4-0. I think Luton will be, if they lose this game, they would have a lot of pressure put on them, but at Ewood Park is a really difficult place to go to and get a point. So I think Blackburn will win by 2-1. I think both sides will offer an attacking threat going forward. Luton so far, I've not been too concerned of them scoring goals because I think they're really, really good at it. They've actually into double figures already in goals, which is matching the lights in the top 6, which is staggering, but they have conceded too many goals in my opinion. They're defensively not solid at all. They need to fix that in their next coming games if they want to have a chance to survive in the Championship, in my opinion. So I think Blackburn will continue their great start, and if they win this game, they could potentially go as high as up to the playoffs depending on results around them. So I'm going to say Blackburn will win this by 2-1. I think an absolute cracker of a game is going to be Charlton versus Leeds. Charlton so far are in their worst run of form so far this season, having 2 defeats in a row, both occasions failing to score goals. Leeds, on the other hand, they've got a few problems of their own, despite being first place in the table. In all of their games so far, they've dominated play, but they've not scored as many goals. However, what would be very encouraging for Leeds, they've got the best away record so far in the league. They're undefeated away from home, and I don't think they've even conceded a goal away from home either. With Charlton though, they've looked really strong at home though, but they have lost their first home game against Birmingham, which was a performance that they were threatening at times, but missing the presence of Lyle Taylor, who could be really, really clinical and can make every player in the squad go alive. It's really, really been starting to show. The likes of Conor Gallagher need to feed off him. The likes of Jonathan Lecco, they need to feed off him as well. The whole team just feels a little bit flat at the moment. However, if you actually look at their head-to-head record over the years, Charlton have a much better record than Leeds, which really, really surprised me. Out of all their meetings, Charlton have won half of them, which is a really good record going into this game, and Charlton will need to try and get responsible with 2 defeats in a row. However, I cannot look aside Leeds' terrific away form. Even with the miracle workers that are Charlton Athletic, I think they won't be able to face Leeds' terrific away form. I think Leeds will win by 1-0. I don't think it'll be a very, very high scoring game. In fact, the last time they played each other at the Valley, it was a 0-0 draw. So it could potentially even be a 0-0 draw, but I do have a feeling that Leeds will get the odd goal. I think maybe by Nketiah or one of the defenders like Dallas or even Phillips in the midfield. I think one of them players will get the goal with just more quality and a terrific away form. And I think Charlton in their worst form so far, I think Leeds will just about edge them. I know it's a must win if they want to try and get promoted. So I think Leeds will win and take this game seriously and win by 1-0. I think one of the closest games this whole weekend is going to be Derby versus Birmingham. Derby so far have been a side that have shown promise, but they've just not been able to deliver performances off the pitch that reflect it. Against Leeds, they did very, very well to get a point, with Chris Martin being of all people to get the goal in the end. But so far, at home especially, they've actually looked really, really poor and actually lacking any creativity going forward. With Birmingham, they've been an inconsistent side. One week they're really, really good and one week they're kind of mediocre. Away from home as well, I'm not too sure about Birmingham. Birmingham actually have done okay away from home, gained a few decent points away from home. But both of those performances didn't look like really, really convincing performances. It was a lot like performances that blew teams away. It was just winning by like 1 shot on target or something like they did against Brentford. We could see a very similar game going. I expect Derby to have most of the possession in this game, and then Birmingham to potentially pose a threat from their set pieces and corners, because they've looked really good so far. This game last year ended as a 3-1 victory to Derby. However, they are missing the attacking prowess of the likes of Mason Mount and Harry Wilson, I feel. With Wacko and Mario, they are good players, but they need players around him to try and support them. The likes of Joseph who need to contribute more. Huddleston needs to contribute more. Defensively as well, they've looked a little bit flat actually. They've not looked as defensively compact as they were most times under Lampard. Even with Lampard's style with Derby, at times they got caught out defensively, but I thought with Koku, he would address that a little bit more, but he's not really done that so far, which surprised me. With Birmingham, as I say, I don't expect them to be in too much in the game, and if anything, they may threat from the counter-attack or set pieces. So I think this will be close, and the fact that Birmingham have actually never beaten Derby ever in a competitive competition, I'm going to say this will be a 2-1 home victory to Derby. I was almost tempted to say a 1-1 draw or even a 2-2 draw, because I truly think that both of these sides are almost allergic to winning so far. I mean, that's probably a bit harsh for me to say that about Birmingham, because Birmingham have actually done really, really well. But away from home, Birmingham don't really blow teams away. I think the best performance away from home was against Charlton actually, which may encourage them. But having said that, Derby at home have not looked convincing either. I think I'll just narrowly edge Derby on, but I'm not looking back that this game could even be a draw or even a Birmingham win, like with one shot on target. So I'm just going to edge Derby and getting a 2-1 home victory. And now we enter for what must be a must-win game for Huddersfield. They are playing against Millwall. Huddersfield showed a little bit of promise against West Brom. At times they've looked actually pretty creative going forward, which is ultimately what they've been missing this whole entire season. However, defensively, they are really, really struggling to state their authority. In fact, especially down the wings. If you look, I heavily praised West Brom with their wings, with the likes of Phillips, who have a lot of joy. But if you look at their fullbacks, they're not really presenting any sort of dominance and trying to keep the defence organised so far. I think their defence overall has been really, really shocking actually. And I thought maybe at championship level, they'd have a bit of stability defensively, but right now it's almost they're carrying the symptoms from the Premier League to this league, and it's almost having a more detrimental effect. With Millwall so far, they are not in a fantastic run of form, so this will be a fantastic opportunity for either one of these teams to get a point or even 3 points. I think Huddersfield have actually had a fantastic record against Millwall. I think Millwall have only won one time against Huddersfield, which you're going to have to look all the way back at 2012. This game could show a few red cards. Over the past 6 or 7 meetings against them, we've had 2 red cards, both going to Huddersfield actually. And I could see this being a very entertaining but a very, very scrappy game. I think overall this will be a draw. I think this will be a 1-1 draw. I simply because I think Millwall are devoid of any creativity of blowing teams away so far. If they had more goals and more quality within them, I'd probably edge Millwall a little bit. But the fact that Huddersfield have shown a little bit of progress, we're still yet to see that in Johnson Stadium, of course. But I do believe that they'll cancel each other out and get a 1-1 draw from this game. So now we have Hull versus Cardiff. Both sides managing to get a win last weekend. Hull having a fantastic away victory against Luton. For them, it took them a little bit of time to get going. It only took the 67th minute actually to get their first goal. It was their first glimpse of quality, and Krzyzki and Bowen once again were the 2 players that really heavily contributed to it. Stewart as well in the midfield have been absolutely terrific so far. Cardiff, they managed to get a 1-0 victory against Middlesbrough, which the game was practically done and dusted in the 2nd minute. Although overall they had a fantastic performance. What was the only thing disappointing from that is they didn't score more than 1 goal, because Middlesbrough were barely in the game at all. Cardiff managed to do the double over Hull. Obviously last time they played each other was their promotion season. I think Hull would be a little bit more prepared for this game. I think with this game though, I think with the quality that both these sides have, it'll be really, really close. And I believe that this game, I'm going to be quite bold, will be a 0-0 draw. I can see this game really, really being a little bit quiet. I think Hull will have majority of the chances, but if you look at most of their games, they are very, very creative going forward, but they are not anywhere near clinical than they should be. And with Cardiff away from home, they've not really blown teams away so far. In fact, they've sat back quite a little bit away from home, and it'll be an even game, but I think it'll be too even to the fact it'll be a stalemate. So I'm going to say a 0-0 draw in this game. So now we have Middlesbrough versus Sheffield Wednesday. Middlesbrough may have the upper hand in this game, also being at home and not having Carabao Cup action. Sheffield Wednesday were disappointingly knocked out by Everton, which was a really disappointing first half performance. It was a bit of a game of two halves, with Everton having the first half and Sheffield Wednesday having the second half. But with the quality that Everton have in terms of their clinical ability, Sheffield Wednesday got completely blown out the park. Middlesbrough need a response from their really disappointing game against Cardiff. I don't think they even had a shot on target in that game, which really speaks the volumes. Sheffield Wednesday, they were really lucky to get a point against Fulham. They were practically outplayed from start to finish against Fulham, but who somehow managed to get a point for them. And I think with Gary Monk, he's made Sheffield Wednesday more resilient, which is encouraging. My only issue with them now is that if they're going to score enough goals to try and climb higher up the table, in my opinion. With Middlesbrough, there was promise. Jonathan Woodgate almost had a mini honeymoon period where he was unbeaten in 4 games. That's gone to drift now, and he's going to need to try and pick up everyone's spirits again. And the fact the game against Cardiff ended so quickly and Middlesbrough just simply could not get themselves into the game was really poor from them, in my opinion. In this game though, I can see Middlesbrough being one of the favourites actually, because they have a fantastic record against Sheffield Wednesday. Although Sheffield Wednesday got a really shocking 1-0 away victory against Middlesbrough at the Riverside last year. I think this game will not have many goals, but I think Middlesbrough will win by 1-0. I can see Middlesbrough recovering in this game. I think in the Riverside they've looked really good, and at times this season they've had brilliant performances. It's just whether they could be consistent. With Sheffield Wednesday, they're still trying to get used to Gary Monk. I do believe in this game they'll just be a little bit quiet, so I think Middlesbrough win by 1-0, I think. Undoubtedly, the game I am most looking forward to this weekend is Preston versus Bristol City. Both of these teams are in the playoff. This is going to be a real playoff fight. I think whoever wins this game will have a very strong chance of finishing this weekend into the automatic promotion places. With Preston, they are probably going to be a little bit in the disadvantage of playing in Carabao Cup. They did play against a very good Manchester City side. They were practically outclassed in the first half. They were 3-0 down at half time. I think they did really well for them not to concede anymore. In fact, in the second half, Preston did have a couple of chances, I think. I'm very grateful that Preston beat Manchester City. If you've not seen in one of Ben HD's video, I made a very bold shout that Man City were going to beat Preston, and I was almost really scared, because this was very close to the time when they lost against Norwich. I was going to make a parody song if Preston North End won. So I'm really glad I didn't do the same thing with Colchester against Spurs, otherwise you probably would have seen me breaking my vocal cords by now. So I'm very grateful on that. Bristol City though, they hate playing against Preston. They've not beaten Preston at all. Most of the times Preston won. Very narrowly, very rarely that Bristol City actually earn a draw. But the reason I'm really excited for this game is said by their league position. Both of these teams are in fantastic forms. Bristol City are undefeated in 6, Preston are undefeated in 5. So one of these long run games could potentially come to an end. Preston, however, have got a 100% start at Deepdale. And I do not think, even with the quality that Bristol City have, they are mounted full of injuries at the moment. And I think Preston will just about have too much for them and win by 2-1. I think this will be a very classic Preston-Bristol City game where Preston will win by just a little edge of luck and quality. And Bristol City will ultimately have an off day and not manage to beat their opposition. So I'm going to say a 2-1 home victory to Preston, continuing their fantastic record against Bristol City, and could potentially see them in the top 2. And the final game this weekend will be played on Sunday. It is Barnsley versus Brentford. My opinion, must-win game for Barnsley. One stat I really was surprised at: since both of these sides were playing in the Championship, Barnsley have never lost against Brentford, which actually really surprised me. Most of the time, Barnsley would actually draw against Brentford, which could be what might happen this weekend. Barnsley so far, they've shown glimpses of good performances, but they just seem to shoot themselves on their foot sometimes, and they give away really cheap and bad goals. Brentford so far, they've just been lacking a bit of flair going forward. It could be Ollie Watkins trying to get used to the number 9 or 10 position. Could be the loss of Neil Bapay could have really taken the sting and the tack out of the team. It could be Thomas Frank's tactics are just not quite stimulating into brilliant effect, unlike Dean Smith's tactics were this time last year. Either way, Brentford, I'd say, are underperforming, and Barnsley are underperforming as well, even by their standards. I could see this game being a very dramatic game. 1-0 home victory for Barnsley. In my opinion, I think Barnsley just have a little bit more of an edge being at home. Because at Oakwell, most of the time they played well. If you take away the Luton game, the other times they've been at home, Barnsley have looked pretty good, and have been unlucky not to gain through for the game, especially against Leeds as well at home. Despite losing 2-0, most of the time it was a very tightly contested 0-0 game, and Barnsley probably should have taken the lead before Leeds did. With Brentford as well, I'm still not too convinced. If you take away their fantastic performance against Derby out of the equation, the other times they've just been below par, and I think that may continue in this game, because I think Barnsley will be eager to try and get out of the bottom 3, because they've fallen into the bottom 3 of the table for the first time. So I think Barnsley will win by 1-0. So that wraps it up for the end of my Championship predictions video. Obviously this is not the fixture marathon, so I'm not predicting Premier League, League 1, League 2, etc. However, I will include my predictions in text form as I'm speaking right now for Premier League, League 1 and League 2, in case any of you are interested. Are you excited for this weekend in the Championship? Let me know in the comments down below. What fixture are you most looking forward to this weekend? Let me know in the comments down below. I think after this game, I'll be deciding my September team of the month, so there's probably quite a lot riding on this weekend of Championship fixtures, so that'll be very interesting as well. So anyway, that'll wrap it up. Thank you guys so much for watching. You guys are legendary if you saw the end of this video. As always, take care guys.